Thinking of investing, working, or starting a business in the cannabis industry? We've got you covered right here on Plant Problems. Hosted by Tony Frischknecht, Plant Problems takes a different approach to cannabis than what you're seeing and hearing from the mainstream media. Come along with Tony and be in the know about how to invest, work, or start a cannabis business. Let's get the show started with your host, Tony Frischknecht.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Plant Problems. This is your host, Tony Frischknecht. I hope you guys are having a great day out there. Thank you so much for joining me. Without you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. So thank you so much for coming and checking out my show today. Today, I've got a great show for you guys. I'm going to break down the cannabis business owner as it is today. There are a wide range of people that are excited about being in the industry. I'm going to give you the three types and share my thoughts in between them and describe each one of them for you today. I think it's very useful knowledge for you to understand the day and the market we're sitting in right now. You know, if you look back at this in 6 months, it might be different, but for right now, we're in this steady pattern of entrepreneurs that are either creating something from scratch or buying a company up and then building it from there. So let's get this started off. Type 1. Type 1 is what I would like to call the underground or underground business owner. They could be thinking about moving into the regulated market and they're not sure how. So they're unsure how and where they're going to do this, but they know that that's really the only way to survive because the reality is coming that they're not going to be able to continue doing business as they've been doing for so long. This business owner is going to have to make some tough decisions. And one of the scariest part about being in this area is understanding the authorities and dealing with police and dealing with building department and all these regulatory things that come into play when you step into the legal market. This causes a lot of stress and anxiety. I know many who've gone through it, and I've known many that decided to continue staying in the black market because it was too scary. The next thing would be small cash investment. These are essentially one-man crews that are thinking about going for the big time. At that state, you might have 10, 20, maybe even $50,000 saved up, depending on how good you are with your money. A lot of underground folks would kind of spend it as they made it, which I'm not saying anything that's how everybody is, but across the globe, there's a lot of business owners that are just bad with finances. And that's something that happens in every industry. I actually got started with very small funding. And it required me to reach out to friends, family, and ask them for whatever money I could at the time. I was able to acquire a $15,000 loan from a girlfriend at the time. And then I was also able to get another $20,000 loan from a friend. So with that, I was sitting on $35,000 and I knew that wasn't enough money. I did a lot of hoping and praying. And sometimes that's all you have is, well, I got to make this work. Sometimes the numbers don't work out. But when you are in a position where you really don't have much to lose, it's a little bit easier to take those risks. So I was able to take the finances that I received from friends and family and put a deposit on a warehouse. And I also had about $50,000 worth of equipment, from lighting, fans, to trays, pots, irrigation stuff, nutrients. Basically, I had all the start stuff for the warehouse, but I didn't know how that was going to be. I didn't know how it was going to end up. In the very first couple months, I ended up creating a partnership with an individual that allowed me to this allowed me to double the output of the equipment that I had when I first rented the property. So that was pretty big. But when I went into it, I had no idea. I knew I had to do something, but I really didn't have a clue. I wouldn't recommend it. For one, I'll tell you guys out there right now, shooting from the hip, I've learned, is usually more costly than what it's worth. I was very fortunate in that aspect. So when you're coming from the underground, you're working up. These are some of the obstacles that you got to deal with. Let's go into type 2. So type 2 is the general entrepreneur. Somebody that's either seen some success or been very successful in other industries. These are business owners that have ran regular businesses and have seen the new hot idea of cannabis, and they're going to get hit rich or make their fortune in cannabis now that they've seen some other successes. This can be a big mistake a lot of the times. I've even experienced it on a couple occasions. To be successful in one business and just go to a next and expect it to do the same is ignorant. Just because you have been successful doesn't mean you're going to automatically be successful and you can do the same thing. There's so many different variables to get this right. And I don't find this just in cannabis. I think this is a majority of businesses. So I wouldn't be specific and say this is only the cannabis. I think this is everywhere. So you got to be real with yourself, especially the new entrepreneur coming into the industry. You got to really understand that, hey, this is going to be some hard work. It's not going to be easy. And if you're any good at building businesses, you should have some pretty good systems in place that you can follow. That's definitely a huge advantage to somebody coming outside of the industry into the industry. Generally, they have their own money. They're well funded. And that gives you a lot of breathing room. If you were to refer back to type 1, the underground entrepreneur, I'll just say that, the underground entrepreneur, I like the sound of that. They don't have the flexibility as the established entrepreneur. But generally, they do have the knowledge. So there's kind of a give and take there. And one seems to think they know better than the other a lot of times, which may or may not be true. I think it takes a little bit of both. Actually, let me rephrase that. It definitely takes a little bit of both. You need one and the other. Or you need to have a partnership that creates something like that. Because the type 2 entrepreneur, he doesn't have the experience. Not to say he can't get it, but probably, unless he's a farmer, he probably doesn't have the grow experience. So that kind of handcuffs you a little bit. It's not impossible, though. I've met a lot of different growers out there that feel, well, just because they know the plant. I think it's hard to understand that somebody else can actually do this that's not a gardener. And I feel for my growers out there because I've said it many times, I'm a grower at heart, but it's not the ultimate way to be successful. You have to run a solid business too, because with so many pressures of taxes and regulation, you can't just say, oh, we'll be okay, and turn a blind eye to the bad situations that are coming up. And I've dealt with many of them. And I've also tried to ignore some of them too, and they don't go away. Just like bad debt, it doesn't go away, it just sits there and gets worse. Experience in retail. Now, there were some guys that got into the Colorado market that had retail experience, but very few were versed in customer service. A lot of us had to learn this as we opened up stores. I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to work in the store all the time. I had some retail background from just my years of doing inside sales for different companies. I worked at Home Depot and Sears. And so I had some retail experience there, but I also had some restaurant management experience too. But to really know how to run a good crew, I would say a lot of the owners out there weren't that familiar with running a retail operation. And there's so many different things you learn, especially loss of inventory. This keeping track of inventory that's coming from your grow to your retail sales location. There's so many things in between where that product can get lost or stolen or just miscounted that you don't think about, especially with the small and large amounts of different strains that are actually being sent over from your grow location. I mean, you could have 2 pounds of product B and 1 to 2 ounces of product A, depending on your harvest. Well, that product, the small couple ounces, can easily get lost in the mix of things, or can easily be picked up by somebody if it's not checked in properly. These are little steps that even if you were to run a mall retail location, a lot of those systems in place with the corporate program. So Corporate would come in and put together some systems and say, this is how you do it, and boom, it would be done. You don't have the luxury of that because you're creating it. So it's a creation in the mix. These are some of the retail woes that you just have to deal with. And the third type we'll call 10,000 hours. The third type is hone their business skills in cannabis. We had something in Colorado as the medical marijuana market started to blossom. It was called vertical integration. And for those of you that haven't listened to some of my other shows, vertical integration is the process from seed to sale. Basically, you grow it, transfer it, sell it in your retail, and so on. There's really no middleman. It's one continuous company from start to finish, which seems great because you have all the control, and you do. But the problem is you also have all the failure. So when you have to step into 2 different locations, that's just that much more overhead you have to take care of. And essentially, it's like starting 2 companies, creating 2 companies. You've got a manufacturing company and you've got a retail outlet store. And they're both for 2 different processes. When we started our grow facility, 2 of us business partners actually built the interior of our grow with the help of some employees, while 2 other of our business partners created the retail space. Each one of them had its challenges. The grow facility was very expensive just due to the equipment that's needed and the environmental control systems that have to be put in place. And each time you get bigger, those spaces tend to need more money because you have to create a more ideal environment. The retail facility was less of a challenge because we were building a pickup location for customers to come in and purchase product. These products there were very few choices in the beginning. We had started off with 2 different types of cannabis, and one of them I had been growing for years, so that worked out pretty well. But nowadays you see the amount of different flower that you can purchase and different edibles you can buy, and everything's kind of regulated down to the portion where when you buy something from a vendor, it's going to be compliant with the state. And if it's not, you need to know that too. But back 10 years ago, they were still making edibles and wrapping them in saran wrap like they were homemade. And this really was how it looked when you showed up a Rice Krispie treat wrapped around in cellophane. There's no way you would see that now, but that's how it was for a few years. In the grow facility, you would deal with product loss, and you weren't sure how much at the time. You weren't sure exactly how your cure time was going to be with your yields. It was very up and down for quite some time. So a lot of the times you were trying to come up with your perfect numbers, and it was a lot more work than it should be, but we didn't know. So growing through those parts and really understanding some of these little nuances that come along, you can't really tell anybody about that. That unless you walk them through every step you've gone through. It's hard to tell somebody that unless they've experienced it. Working hand in hand with the regulators. I mentioned before, in dealing with authority, these are things that these people have already overcome. They have stepped into bad situations where products have not been counted, or there's been too much product on hand that pushed you outside of your legal count. So there was a lot of products that you would have. The state would only allow you to have so much dry product at a time. And I remember situations where people would show up from the city and just starting to do an audit. And you're like, we're showing that you're 200 pounds over. That happened to people that I knew. And they made them destroy 200 pounds worth of flour. If you can imagine those times, let's say just 2,000 a pound. Wow. Could anybody stand to lose that much money? I don't even know. I know I've lost some pretty big money. Could you imagine losing $400,000? Not only that, if they suspend it and say, well, there's different situations with pesticides where you have to put $200,000 worth, or where you have to hold onto a couple 100 pounds of dried flower that you can't sell. And every day you can't sell it. It's just degrading in quality. So it's worth less, all the way till more than likely you're going to destroy the whole thing. So you got to watch we'll call it your savings account. You got to watch your savings account start off big and then just dwindle off into nothing. How painful do you think that is? I have been a part of some of those situations, and I'm telling you, it makes your stomach turn and it makes your guts hurt. And I talk about one of my episodes, Cannabis Angst. Can't remember what number one it was, but it came out about 3-4 weeks ago. These are the things that are going to drive you to that anxiety, and that stress level is going to shoot up. And when you're relying on that product to pay your bills, it's very hard not to count your chickens before they're hatched. And that's happened multiple times. And I've just learned at this point, I never count my chickens until they're hatched. It's too crazy and too stressful. So I know people believe in hope, and I do for certain situations, just not in business. You've got to make sure you understand the worst case scenarios all the time. And if you land ahead of that, hey, you're doing awesome. And finally, the time to get out. Experiencing when it makes sense for you to sell your business. And I heard somebody comment the other day and said, it's a lot harder to sell your business than it is to build it. And I've been through those experiences. And to show somebody what you're making and lay out all the numbers and show that it's profitable and decide on what the multiple is. So, whether it's 5 times earnings, 10 times earnings, 2 times earnings, it's all over the place. Anyone that tells you there's an exact formula to figuring out how much a cannabis business is worth, they're full of shit. It really depends on who your buyer is and what they're looking for. There's not a silver bullet for this. This takes months and months of work, hundreds of hours of attorneys, and the whole time you are investing your time and energy into something that could fall apart before you even close. So the anxiety and stress that's built up through this situation is greater than what most people have been through. And I believe that happens in every industry, not just cannabis. I'm just more familiar with it on the cannabis side. So with those 3 types I just explained there, that is a majority of what you're either going to encounter or you're going to become in cannabis. Which one do you want to be? Where do you guys want to go? The opportunity is out there for you guys to be type 3. Let's go back, because this is not a quick game. Minimum 5 to 7 years. I would say 10 at least. If you're in a younger market, you could probably get there sooner. So if you're in just a starting either medical market or recreational market, you'll be able to take this and you will be able to do some pretty good stuff as long as you stick with it, just like anything else, if you stick with it. That's what I wanted to talk to you guys about with today when you're out there and you're looking at the industry and seeing who you want to work with and what type of people are out there. These are the types you're going to encounter. And I think there's no perfect person to work with, but I know from my experience, if you're able to capture somebody that has been around and gone through it, it's generally who I try to follow. And it's hard too, because you will have friends and you're like, man, I'd really like to work with them, but they're just not good with their money. Or they're a good guy, but they really don't have the skills. And this is business. You got to be a businessman about it. You got to decide where does my dollar go the furthest, and how can I be successful? So before I forget, I've got some great news. I have created a call-in line. Now I set this up because, hey, some people just can't text anything in right now, or they're just busy and they're like, I could make a phone call in my car while I'm driving. So if you're listening to this, I'm going to give you guys this number. numbers, and this is, of course, the U.S. So if you're outside the U.S., type in +1, and it's 720-551-8530. And what I'd like to do is open this up for you guys to leave me any ideas, like show topic ideas, or you have a question. I'd like to share with the listeners your question and actually answer it for you on the air. So I'm going to create some episodes like this. And of course, you're welcome to leave your comments there. But I'm really excited about using something like this. So please feel free to call me. And then, of course, you can contact me at plantproblem.com and go through there and contact me there. You can also call me there at that number and leave me a message. I think this is pretty exciting. I haven't seen too many people answering questions on some of the shows that I've been listening to. So I really look forward to you guys taking advantage of this. So plantproblems.com, you can also leave your comments, of course. So please take me up on that and use it. Okay? I want to give you the best information I can. And the only way I can do that is if you tell me what you're looking for. So let me know what you're looking for. And just want to warn you, I will put your audio recording on the episode. I'll actually put it in there. But unless you tell me not to, you don't have to share your name. Just ask the question. If you want to share your name, go ahead, and I can say it over the air, all right? But no other information is going to get out. This is solely for me. So just so you guys know, that number again is 720-551-8530. I want to thank you guys for listening out there. You guys are the reason I do this show, and I want to make it better for you any way I can. So whatever you guys want to share with me, please call me or reach out to me at plantproblem.com. Okay? Thanks again for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
You've just listened to another insightful episode of Plant Problems. If you like what you heard so far, don't forget to tell your friends and colleagues. For additional resources or to leave a review, head over to plantproblem.com. Join us again next week on Plant Problems with Tony Frischknecht. We look forward to having conversations with you as we go along this journey.